What is up, guys, and welcome back to the throtl YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing a director's cut on our S13 project. You guys have seen it kind of across the last 2 or 3 years in a lot of different states, but today we're going to do a full summary on the entire build process from where it started with TJ and Calvin, and then where throtl purchased it, and then recently where we gave the car away to Wyatt and the car went to Sema 2019. So sit back and enjoy today's YouTube video.
Can they hear me?
Is this thing on?
Hello?
Oh, is it hostile takeover?
Is this a react
It's
video?
it's a director's cut, Tej. It's a new thing they're
Define-
trying. Welcome to the director's cut, boys. We're gonna look at our old videos of the 240. We were the original owners before throtl took it. Hey, what are you laughing at? Roll the clip. Oh, it's a Vlogmas one. Wow.
Dang.
That's an oldie.
I'm gonna thumbs this video up.
Got him. oh, this is the video where we go and check out the car and make an offer.
Oh, I remember this. There was a dude in Oceanside. I think he was a friend of like Tanner Fox or something. He was a friend of someone that we knew. It was a friend of a friend. And this was like a personal car of his. Do you remember? And he had this 240 that was relatively clean.
It was really nice. I totally don't know how to haggle and I don't know how to barter, right? So Evan, I was just watching Evan and TJ get amongst it, and I was learning. Yeah, good cop. Yeah, they told me that. Good cop, bad cop.
We bought it.
I had to go later that night. Wait,
oh, yeah, here you are. You're driving. You're driving at night.
Oh, can I get a doctor? Oh, doctor!
So yeah, then you brought it home, and then that was it. So this next video is SR20 swapping the S13. And around this time, I think I just spent a lot of time with Adam and his S13, and I was like, dude, this S13 is sick.
I remember too.
Yeah.
And then David from JDM in California, he was like, hey, if you guys want to do a swap, we were brainstorming what can we do next.
Yeah, and he's like, I have
swap.
a trans and SR20 and it was tuned and had a whole front clip. So it kind of worked out. And ISR, I remember, hooked us up with a whole bunch of stuff.
Mishimoto was a big part of it too. Mickey was helping a lot. My very first, like, very hands-on engine swap. So it was a lot I learned from there. It was like the next step to learning stuff, like bolt-ons. Now we're doing engine swaps. We didn't have a lift, right? We didn't have a lift. So we're doing an engine swap on the floor. Mickey and TJ are up top, like massaging the engine, and I'm underneath trying to get the transmission, avoiding transmission fluid spilling in my mouth. The next step was to change the look of the car. We were gonna send it to Premium, and Premium asked me, what color do you want it? And I was like, I don't know, yellow. Yellow because we wanted it bright. In this video, you'll see what Beckerman and Premium did to my car. Oh, Daniel's car. Were you in on this?
No.
Oh, and they're calling us down to the street.
Yeah, so he didn't roll up to the shop. He said, hey, we want to like sheet pull it to you guys, which is like not out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Oh, now there's a deck lid. A lot of cameras on us. Were you suspecting anything at this point? I was totally caught off by surprise.
When we saw Evan, that's when you're like, why is he here? But did I ever think that they would go this like rated R? No way.
X.
Like
this
veiny,
is X.
thick shaft. Didn't think that would happen.
Whose idea was it?
Evan. Evan was.
It was like Evan's idea.
It's because we
took the wheels.
Oh, we pranked Evan. This is why he did this.
Can you believe that turned into the throtl orange 240? That's crazy.
I couldn't drive it around. I live by schools.
After the penis was removed, Calvin drove it for a little bit, and
it was just too much.
Calvin, once again, didn't have the love and care that the car needed.
Okay, I'm leaving.
And
later?
Yeah, actually leave so I can be honest here. Calvin just did the typical Calvin thing and like just didn't ever drive the car, didn't ever wash it, didn't upkeep it, and it was a 90s old car that S13s need love. It just wasn't provided by Calvin. So the car sat for a while. He didn't really ever drive it for whatever reasons he had. And then eventually Mickey came to us, I think first, or maybe it was Evan, I don't know, but as a unit, they were like, yo, we're pretty interested in this car, we want to do it as a giveaway. And they saw the light at the end of the tunnel that Calvin couldn't see. So they put together an offer, and they offered Calvin money for it, and Calvin was like, yep, I'm out, and never looked back. And then they took over the car, and then that's where this video is going to pick up with Mickey.
All right, guys, well, I'm Mickey from throtl, and this was the day that we actually took over the build from Calvin and TJ when they decided they no longer wanted to continue on with the 240. We jumped at the chance. This is a really nice, clean car, and they had done some nice mods to it already, i.e. the SR20 engine swap and a couple other bits that were really cool on it. So it was a perfect project for us. It was already here, the price was right, and we knew that the work that was done was already pretty solid. So it was a great starting point. As you can see here, Ricky and I wasted no time in blowing this thing apart. We actually stripped it down in about a day, actually maybe an afternoon. Had this thing basically gutted and ready to be sort of prepared to go off to the paint shop. As you can see, we removed everything, the subframes, the engine, the third member, basically actually the whole drivetrain came out. And at that point, we actually started to fit the Rocket Bunny Aero kit. This kit was the perfect choice for us. We felt like it was a really nice, seamless look for the car, and it was something that was readily available here in the States, and nice aesthetic for the car and how we envisioned it being when it was done. So one of the bonuses to the Rocket Bunny kit was how well it actually fit the car straight out of the gate. As you can see, we cut the fenders, got them all welded up. Here's Ricky and I taking out the engine and front subframe. Looks like actually Evan and I taking out the engine and front subframe. And down she goes. Man, I love that engine cart. It's one of the best tools we have around the shop. Look at that, everything. Engine, front subframe, suspension, transmission, you name it, it all came out in one shot. Here we are pulling the engine off. We're gonna put it on the stand here because we knew already that this car was going off to paint. So what we wanted to do is get this up on the stand. That way, while the car was off at paint, we could be doing other things such as cleaning up this engine and making the proper modifications to it that needed to be made while the car was gone at paint for a few weeks. Here's Evan and I stripping down all the wiring. As you know, if you're gonna do a full paint job on a car and you're gonna paint the engine bay, it is advantageous to do all the disassembly in the engine bay yourself. That way when the car comes back, you know how everything goes back together. So here we are fitting the dolly that we borrowed from our good friend Memo under the car. Ricky and I did secure the car to the dolly by tack welding it. And then here we are finishing up the over fender cuts and welds and seam sealing of the chassis so that no water can get in behind the work we were doing. This kit posed a pretty big challenge because the front over fenders open up the front wheel well so much that you see all the inner fender well liner work in there, the steel structure. So we actually removed the steel structure inside the wheel well, which is a pretty structural part of the car, and replaced it by using a hot rod wheel tub, as you can see here. And what we needed to create was a nice flat area so that when the kit was on, you didn't see the steel that was back there before, which protruded and actually would have hit the tire when you turn the wheel. So by making that modification, we were able to clean that area up, get that out of eyesight, and also make it more functional. So here's our rear subframe up on the table. We did get a GK Tech rear subframe reinforcement kit. So with all these GK Tech parts, I fitted them up, Evan welded them in, and added a lot of structure to the rear subframe. Now we're moving on to the Aero Catch hood pins, probably the best and most aesthetic looking hood pin on the market, but our Seba hood needed quite a bit of modification in order to get them in there properly. We had to remove a lot of the understructure to get access to the top layer of carbon fiber that these mount on. Ah, the Lexus CT200H. This must have been the day we ran up to Sparco to pick up our seats. Oh, and there they are. Yep, there's our QRT Evos from Sparco. Awesome seats, perfect for the job. And as we roll the dolly out, we got a bunch of people on board, borrowed a forklift and lifted that thing up. And this was one of the most sketchy drives I've ever had up to SOS Customs, with a car on a dolly on a trailer. And as I mentioned earlier, once the car was off at paint, we actually went ahead and stripped down the motor. We did not rebuild this engine. It was in really good shape and had great compression from when Calvin and I had originally put it in the car. So we knew we were starting with a good bullet. what we did was we basically just took it all apart, cleaned everything up really nice, tried to make it look fresh and new. The SR20 is a pretty nice looking engine from the outside, so I think it cleaned up really good. This is the day I went off to Meza Paint and we actually concocted our paint mixture. One thing a lot of people don't know is that we actually got this paint code from a Smart car. Smart had an orange that we really liked. The problem was it was about $6,000 for paint and materials for that particular color. So what we did was we took the color chip to Meza, and the pros there actually mixed us something very similar. In fact, when you put them side by side out in the light, they looked identical for a fraction of the price. And here we are at SOS Customs. They're laying down the PPG primer on all of our body kit and chassis. And it looks like here the door jambs and the jambs are already all done, which is a pretty cool process. They actually go in and paint all the hidden stuff first, and then they go back and paint the exterior, and then you have an overlap and a seamless finish. This was a really cool process to watch because the color was very underwhelming in the beginning of the spraying process, but once it cured and was out in the sun, it was bonkers. Here's me and the boys loading the car on the trailer. Again, super sketchy. That's our U-Haul rental truck. With TJ's trailer, we got it back. Luckily, when the car is stripped down, you wouldn't believe how light it actually is. It moved around on the dolly pretty easily. And this is the beginning of the transformation back, putting all the bits that we took off back on. And this was a fun process. We basically took everything apart, cleaned it up, or replaced it with GK Tech aftermarket suspension components. As you can see, everything is shiny and new going back in the car. And if it wasn't, we cleaned it up and painted it. As you can see, the third member there, painted in a nice gloss black to match the spindles. Man, that's a pretty thing going back in. As one whole unit, Ricky and I bolted that thing back in. As you can see, we also took some time and care and actually painted the undercarriage of the car as well while the car was on the dolly. It made it a lot easier to clean up the whole bottom of the car and re-undercoat it with a nice coat of shiny black paint. One of the cool upgrades we did to this car was to actually use a CTSV Cadillac caliper. We did have to make some modifications to the CTSV caliper to make it clear the bracketry that holds it onto a 240, but all in all, it was a nice fit up. As you can see, it's a silver finish. So Evan actually took some time and sandblasted down our other calipers, which were other colors from other companies, and actually matched them to the silver on the CTSV caliper. And the horsepower maker. Got our hair dryer from Garrett, all bolted on. What was really cool about this turbo was it is an actual direct replacement for the SR20 from Garrett, which made it a really seamless project for Ricky and I to integrate back onto the SR20. And man, does that thing make some good power. All the hot side stuff coming back together. Ricky and I wiping down the interior. This must mean we're getting ready to put the carpet back in. Here we are mounting the front lower subframe that basically cradles the engine into the front of the car. As you can see, we continued the theme of the fluorescent yellow subframes up to the front. We've got our action clutch install. And now Ricky is cleaning up the transmission. Actually, that's Ricky's son cleaning up the transmission. The moment we've all been waiting for, the engine going back into the 240. The engine bay looks so good in orange, and the engine all cleaned up. Man, what a great look. This car turned out so good. You guys are probably wondering what that Cosmis bag is over top of the valve train of the engine. The reason the Cosmis wheel cover is over top of the engine is because we sent the valve cover back up to SOS to get painted in the same color as the exterior of the car. So we needed to keep that covered, and that was one thing we had laying around that did the job perfectly and kept any stuff out of the valve train of the engine while we worked on it. Here we are getting all the front suspension buttoned back up. With all the new GK Tech parts, it took a while to get everything kind of dialed in. just sort of eyeball alignment, but getting everything buttoned up underneath there was a bit of a process. Our Mishimoto radiator and fans and shroud going in. It's a nice mix of raw aluminum and the satin aluminum finishes that we chose in the engine bay against the orange. Turned out really good. Here's Evan repurposing our HPI intercooler, welding on some tabs that I made to hang it in the opening of the Rocket Bunny kit. And looks like our new valve cover came back from the paint shop now. Here we are putting in the gaskets and setting it on the engine for the first time. Ooh, and I even got a peek of our IS Performance rocker stoppers there as the valve cover was going on. Here's Evan and I unloading the hood from the truck, Ricky and I installing it. You're probably wondering why these parts came back at separate times. It's because we wanted to get the chassis back first so that we could start putting all the major componentry back onto the car. And as they got other parts done, we went up and picked them up and brought them back. Some of the stuff we didn't need till later, the hood being one of them, so that's why that happened. Here I am creating the bracketry for the oil coolers. We did an oil cooler and a power steering cooler up front by the radiator. That turned out a really nice, clean installation. This is the rear suspension going together. I know Evan struggled with this. Pretty sure he drank a couple beers after this one because putting this rear suspension together was not easy. I do like all the fluoro touches underneath the car. I know green and orange is kind of a weird combo, but I think it turned out really good. This is one piece that most people really liked about the car, which was the rear diffuser. One thing you don't know about that rear diffuser is actually very flimsy once it's mounted the way it's intended to be on the car. We had to build a lot of extra brackets to shore that up and make it so that it was actually a functional diffuser. And our Siki Performance brake line kit for our hydraulic e-brake going in. Man, there's a lot going on underneath this car. I'm making the custom front outer tie rods there, custom lengthening them. Evan's working on intercooler piping. Man, we're all over the place. We got a lot done really fast on this car. The Cosmis Wheels had come in with our Falcon and Zenith tires, and this was our first test fit. It's pretty aggressive setup. What was nice is since we went with all the custom GK Tech suspension bits, we were able to actually dial a very aggressive wheel fitment in to the car and actually make a fitment fit the car that wouldn't normally fit. We were able to play with the caster, camber, toe, and all that stuff and get the wheel to sit wherever we wanted. We also used an adjustable upper coilover plate from GK Tech that allowed us to change the roll center. It also allowed us to adjust the camber a lot more than you would be able to with the ordinary camber hat that came on the BC Racing coilovers. Here's our Siki e-brake handle. One of the cool things about this was that we were able to actually relocate the master cylinder to the back of the car with a long rod via a kit that Siki makes. It's my favorite look because it moves that ugly master cylinder that has fluid in it to the back of the car instead of right next to your leg. It's a must, I think, for anybody building a drift car with a hydraulic. Of course, we called in the experts from DNA Garage to come down and help us with the wiring. That's Louis there, getting started on the harness, while I am getting ready to modify our exhaust system with Evan. I went ahead and modded up some, I think it's 3-inch piping that we got from Vibrant Performance, and we actually eliminated the rear muffler section and made sort of a straight pipe application. Turned out to be the perfect look for this car with the body kit and the overall aesthetic of the car. The single straight pipe out the back with my signature black header wrap on it. And we're getting close now. This car is almost ready to go on the road. We got our friends from OC Mobile Alignment down, and he went ahead and tossed an alignment for us here at our shop, so we didn't have to take it anywhere, which is really cool. And then Evan and I topped off all the fluids. Of course, we used our Peak coolant. and brake fluids for this, as well as the motor oil. Maiden voyage time there? And our first startup. Our first startup and our first drive. Wow. This was an epic day. So, of course, we couldn't just build this car and not send it up to DNA Garage for a tune. We worked with Tune by Sean to get this thing dialed up. It made about 300 horsepower on the dyno, which is exactly what we wanted for this car, and we were able to give it off to its eventual winner, Wyatt, with a nice conservative tune on it and some adjustability for him should he want to go bigger down the road. To add to the aesthetics of the car, we wanted a race car feel, so we went with some door cards from Street Faction, and they really cleaned up the interior. The factory panels are very dated, so adding those door cards really added to the look of the interior. We also tossed our hydraulic e-brake in at this point, and then moved on to installing these awesome aux beam LED headlights. After getting the rear panels in to match the front door panels, Ricky and I moved our attention to the interior carpets and dashboard, which we flocked with flocking a la a rally car. If you guys know 240s, you know the dashboards crack quite heavily, and finding a clean dashboard these days for a 240SX is nearly impossible. And if you do find one, they're usually brown. So we decided we're going to use our stock dashboard, fix the cracks, and flock it and put it back in. It's a perfect look for a track style car, and we think it turned out great. So we were all pretty excited to have this car up and running and the interior all put back together and looking sharp. We actually sent our boy TJ out in it so he could feel what it feels like now after a proper rebuild. And I think he loved it. I mean, he went out and did burnouts in it, and we got some great photos of the car with him behind the wheel. I think all in all, this was probably our best build, especially up to that point. And even by today's standards, this was definitely a very strong build to come out of our shop. And I honestly think that if you guys have been around car builds, you're able to watch this from start to finish on our channel. I think you'll see that we pulled out all the stops on this one.
All right, that about wraps up today's YouTube video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for sticking all the way to the end. If you like this style of video, please leave us some comments and some likes down below. We appreciate that. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.